Greetings fanboys and fangirls. This is Jared with another video review from Fanboys Forever. Today it's my great pleasure to bring you a review of the brand new Masters of the Universe Thunder Punch He-Man. That's right, it is the deluxe figure that we've been waiting for. Of course, Mattel has definitely been swiftly checking the boxes on all of those classic He-Man variants, with really only a handful to go. As we look at their latest attempt to recapture the magic of one of the old original He-Men that we all remember that helped make the line what it is today, we're going to be comparing him to previous versions of He-Man that have been released in the line, and also comparing him to a previous version of Thunder Punch He-Man. But before we begin, I would just like to remind you to please subscribe to the channel, and of course like the video if you're able to. It only takes a second and it really helps the channel grow. I would also like to thank everyone who's already completed these steps, because the channel is indeed growing very quickly, and I'm very pleased with the progress, so thank you guys so much. Truly, you are the best. All right, with all that out of the way, let's begin. As we can see, it is a beautiful card because it is the first deluxe card that we've seen in the new Rise of the Snake Men kind of style, where you actually have the scales and the snake head there on the top with the cool eyes. I think that's a really nice touch. You see He-Man's accessories there displayed in the bubble right on the side. He-Man does appear to come with a little less than what we've grown accustomed to with these deluxe figures, which does seem to be a recurring theme between Masters of the Universe lines that Mattel is doing. On the back, there's a few different things to note. Not only do we have some cool art depicting the actual action feature, but we have some beautiful painted artwork as we've become spoiled by. Superb. And what's even more exciting is we actually see some of the snake horde troopers on the back. And there's some rumors right now about a possible maybe Snake Men pack, and those might be included in it. And of course a cross cell showing you some of the other figures available, all of which I have now. And if it helps you, we do have a barcode there. And here he is, all out of the packaging, the Deluxe Thunder Punch He-Man. So let me just talk a little bit about my experience with Thunder Punch He-Man just over the years. When I first really got into Masters of the Universe, and I kind of started discovering more things about the vintage brand and all of that, I was instantly enthralled, of course, by all the different looks for He-Man and all the different variants that had been around through the years, especially all the vintage things. But one look really stuck out to me above the others, and that was the Thunder Punch variant. I'm not really sure what it was. I think it was just the unique kind of red and silver properties. Growing up as a younger kid, I really liked that Battle Armor He-Man because that was the one that I had around. But it was the Thunder Punch version that really got me. I don't really know what it was exactly, but there was just something about that color scheme. So really it was just always going to be something that I was looking forward to in Origins, and something that I was always really curious about if they would even get to, and I'm happy to say they finally did. Looking at the figure a little more closely, there's all kinds of things to look at in terms of sculptural detail. For one thing, I'll go ahead and remove his effects piece here so you can see the figure itself a little bit easier. You have He-Man's unique harness here that he, of course, wears when he's in the Thunder Punch armor. Of course, he does just utilize that old head, the head that they did to make him match the more retro He-Man. And I'll always be very thankful that they did that, because I think that it helped reinvigorate my interest in the line when they announced that, because I just prefer this to the original version that they did that was more based on the mini comics. Now, the skin tone is pretty much the same as what we've seen already. It might be just a tiny little bit more tan, like Filmation tan, than what we'd seen previously. Looking at the actual straps of the armor, you will see all kinds of really cool like tech details. You see little bolts and little separations here and there, as if this really is some kind of mystical technology and not just these smooth straps. So I think that that is really great, because that's the kind of thing that they could have just left to the imagination, just completely smooth plastic. I am impressed that the paint turned out so well on the big H logo, because it's one of those things that's so simple that it's easy to mess up. And I know that sounds weird, but these are the kinds of things that can be misaligned and have some kind of big splotch on it. So I'm really glad that that turned out as well as it did. Of course, with the shorts and the furry underwear, There really isn't much of a difference from what we've already seen, maybe a deeper orange down there on the belt. And on the back, there's all sorts of interesting things happening with He-Man's backpack. Now, the original figure, you would actually turn this dial, and this backpack would open up, and you could load it with little caps. In the 80s and many decades before, cap firing toys were a big deal. It was kind of just like a popper, you know, like you would have around the 4th of July, only it would make a big noise every time you would turn something. So basically a device would go in there and snap, 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 and you hear poof, 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 you know, as it was going. So in a way, it was meant to be the thunder and the thunder punching aspect of it. And that was the unique gimmick for this He-Man. And they've done a wonderful job with this backpack. And it just looks so cool. You would swear that you would be able to turn this dial, but there's nothing like it. I personally wish that you could at least just turn the dial. I think that would be fun. Of course, I totally understand why not. Cap firing toys and all of that really just aren't a thing anymore, probably due to modern safety standards. It's just not going to be a thing. But that gets into a debate that really is starting to pick up some traction within the Masters community about action features and whether or not they should always be replicated. And I may be wrong for saying this, I don't know, but I do feel like Mattel has accelerated some of their releases lately. It feels like, especially in 2022, it was a breakneck pace of getting all these new versions and new waves out, and they all came just about every single time much faster than what they were announced to be coming. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if they know that it's not doing as well at retail, and it's time to kind of keep things going and to make sure that they get out all the characters that they want to get out. And if that's the case, I salute them for that, because they're trying to make sure that this collection is a very complete one, if at all possible. Moving on down, we do see that He-Man has these boots, and these are pretty much a unique colorway in terms of He-Man's boots. We've not really had this exact thing before. The closest we've come is Flying Fists He-Man, but that had more of a straight up brown, and this has more of a burgundy at the boots. So just a little bit of a difference there, but still, it is unique to this figure. Of course, you know all the articulation points by now. The only thing that he isn't going to have that you would typically see is his waist articulation isn't going to function as normally as what you would see because of an action feature, and we're going to get into that. Before we do, though, let's get into his accessories. Now, He-Man does have one vac metallized accessory, and you can see, man, is that a beautiful vac metallization there. Mattel is truly making it known that they are the kings of modern vac metallization. Look at that. This is really nice. It turned out super well. This is He-Man's Thunder Punch shield. His power sword, which is another accessory, is able to just clip right in there for decoration. And it just kind of goes in there, and it's a nice snug fit and not a struggle to put in at all. And it doesn't even come out if you're like, you know, trying to empty it, I guess you could say. So I think this looks beautiful. It would have been nicer had the sword been vac metallized gold as well. I think they missed a trick there. I know why they didn't do it, though. It's because if you have vac metal on this, vac metal on this, and then you have this friction of sliding them together and kind of getting them really snug, there's an increased chance of that chipping right off. So I'm sure that that's why they didn't go that route. Plus, you know, they saved a little money. And of course, that leads me to his chest insignia. It probably could have been vac metallized, but I think that that was more of a cost-cutting thing. And some people don't like the vac metal because it can flake, it can cause some problems, but why they've done entire chests on He-Man that were vac metallized lately, so I don't know why it would have been so difficult to have done the silver here and the silver here, but maybe it was all or nothing. Of course, He-Man can take his power sword and hold it, but I'm going to bring your attention to something. Unlike a lot of the other deluxes in this line, he didn't come with alternate hands. I know this is Thunder Punch He-Man, okay? So we know that it's going to be important for him to be punching with his right hand, but couldn't they have included like an open palm? I know that practically anyone buying this, it's probably not going to be your first, but it's somebody's first Origins figure. And so I know a lot of us have open, you know, gripping hands. But, you know, it's a shame that you actually can't, with what's included, have both the shield and the sword out at once like this. And of course, like I said, easy to just take one of your open grip hands from another He-Man, but I think they could have at least given folks who this was their first and only He-Man, you know, they could have thrown him a bone by giving him an extra hand. Instead, I'll just show you real quick. Yes, He-Man can left-handedly hold his power sword, and looks good and all of that. It still looks like a pretty dull gold comparatively, though, even to the painted silver right here that isn't even back metallized. The other accessory that He-Man includes is this interesting like punching effect that has this kind of trail of energy off of the hand. Now what's interesting about this is it reminds me so much of the one that came with the Masters of the Universe Classics Thunder Punch He-Man, which we will look at here in a minute. I do think it is a good idea that that's kind of a compensation that they have for some of the action features that are missing, that at least you can slide this right over the hand, and it's made out of that really good transparent kind of softer rubberized plastic, and it holds on really well, maybe too well, but we'll talk about that in a second. So he does have an action feature. So those are all of his accessories, and I just want to make this clear about what you get. You get the actual He-Man figure, you have his Thunder Punch accessory, you have the power sword, and you have the vac metallized shield. And believe it or not, that is indeed all you get. Yep, for a deluxe figure, I am not seeing a lot of the deluxe qualities that we used to see with those Origins Deluxes. Now, it's funny to me that in the same wave, we've got King Hiss, who is a very deluxe figure, because he just has a lot going on, lots of alternative accessories and things. But He-Man is one of the least deluxe figures. It could be a situation where maybe to cost out King Hiss coming with all that stuff, maybe they cut some things on He-Man. I would think that in order for him to match previous deluxes, that the bar for entry was having an alternate head, and that was kind of that separation where it's like, okay, he's got an alternate head. That makes him more deluxe. But they didn't do that, and they could have. This would have been a perfect opportunity for them to have released, say, the Filmation head or something. And I know that Thunder Punch isn't a thing in Filmation, but it still would have been cool to have had an extra accessory in there. In previous deluxes, we've had the introductions of things like this. We've had kind of the Bruce Timm mini comics angry berserker He-Man head that I really like. I know a lot of people don't. You've had the angry battle-worn classic head that was released in previous deluxes. And yes, I realize that all of these would fit perfectly on this, and we are going to look at that a little bit later. But again, I have to ask for the people who this is their first Origins figure. Let's make sure that we're throwing a bone for them. Better yet, a brand new head altogether. There's still ways to go on this. How about the problem with Power Head from Filmation? Just something inspired by it, where He-Man looks, you know, when he's looking at the power sword and he sends the power back and he's all sad and everything. I mean, I know that isn't necessarily a very toyetic head, but it would have been great to have just had something a little different. So yeah, I'm slightly disappointed with the number of accessories. Alternate hands, alternate head is what I would have been looking for. And since they didn't do that, I would have wanted either more of a dramatic effect or maybe even a diorama piece. I think any of those things would have helped justify the increasing deluxe price. All right, so this is Thunder Punch He-Man, right? So can he Thunder Punch? Well, I'm going to show you how the action feature works. It's just, you know, the spring-loaded waist. So you twist him and like that. Now, the cool thing is that, yes, indeed, there is a snap. You hear that? So he does do a Thunder Punch. I am impressed that they were able to get it to do a popping noise without the need of having the caps in the backpack. I actually even had to go back and edit out a previous part of this review because I hadn't pulled the waist back far enough. Originally, I was complaining that they hadn't figured out a way to do the Thunder Punch sound, and I was like, yeah, you think they could have? Well, they did. And it was because I felt a little resistance, and I thought that's how far back it went. But no, you have to then do it all the way. And then it makes that great popping noise. So good for them that they were able to actually figure out that excellent popping. But the one bad thing about the action feature is I think in the instructions, it is showing that this flies off of his hand and it's like a projectile, but I can't get it to do that because it's on there pretty well, like on the fist. And I think I've got it on, yeah, that's definitely the right way. So maybe if you just barely put it on, maybe I had it on too well. If you want it to launch off, maybe the idea is to get it on there loosely. There we go. And direct hit. Let's see that again in slow motion. So I can't fault them on that too much because they wanted it to be a secure fit, right? If you were just posing him or something like that. And if you want to launch it off like that, then you just put it on there loosely. They made that action feature work, and they made it work well. So we definitely need to look at some comparisons here. One of the most interesting comparisons of them all will be the old Thunder Punch He-Man from Classics. And if you're wondering, well, why isn't he comparing the original, vintage figure? Well, guys, I didn't grow up in the 80s. I was, when the 80s ended, I was like 2, all right? So cut me some slack. Instead, I grew up in the He-Man starved early 90s, and all I could do was just wonder about He-Man and wish that I had access to those figures. Was able to get some at the flea market, but that was it. Instead, Classics was my line. All right, and here they are, side by side. You may be curious about just a couple of things. One of the things, if you're not familiar with this figure, that you may very well be wondering about is why is He-Man so pale looking? Well, that was an intentional move by the people at Mattel during Classics because at this point there had been so many He-Man variants in Classics that Scott Neitlich and some of the designers, if I remember correctly, and Scott, if you're watching, and I really enjoy your channel, then you can comment down below and help clarify for us. But I'm pretty sure that you guys wanted to do something a little different with He-Man's skin tone. Also remind me if I'm wrong on this. I believe in the bio for Thunder Punch He-Man, it said that at this point in the classic story, He-Man's like hiding in Subternia because Faker has convinced the people of Eternia that He-Man is like a criminal, that he's gone bad, and that he's a Gar, the blue people that Skeletor hails from. And so it made more sense for He-Man not to have as much of a tan as he used his Thunder Punch powers. So I just wanted to put that out there in a cool little piece of Masters trivia from an era that I really loved. So thank you, Scott, for that ingenuity. But I think one thing is obvious right away, and it's what I was talking about earlier. One of the few times in the Classics line that they really sprung for vac metallization was here. And I miss it over here in the Origins version because I love it when they go vac metal on pieces that aren't going to have a lot of friction on them. And this is the perfect kind of piece to do that with, and it would have been over here as well. So missed opportunity there, but especially strange, right? Considering all the times that they had done it on He-Man's armor before in the Deluxes. Maybe Mattel should consider a running change, but I have a feeling it didn't cost out. One interesting thing is the kind of rock texture that's behind the H. I really like that. Also, I'm a big fan of He-Man having a red belt to go with the rest of the ensemble, and it just makes it a little more unique than sticking with He-Man's regular orange. But that's coming from a Classics fanboy. Now, on the back, this is probably one of the more unfortunate comparisons that we're going to have to do. As I was saying, there's really nothing to this over here. It is a cool visual, and it looks neat, and the sculpting is really nice. But over here, there's so much more going on. I mentioned on this that I wanted the dial to turn. Well, that's because this dial can turn. Sure, it doesn't do anything, but it's that extra little bit of functionality that I really love. Also, this guy, you actually had the ability to open up the backpack, and you can see that when you turn the dial, not for nothing, it's just a cool thing. You can actually spin the thing with the caps that would have popped. And I actually think that that's just such a great little detail. Honestly, I could do an entire review series on all the great things that they did for Classics like that. But yeah, it beats the Origins one to death. Of course, this was a premium kind of release, and even though the prices are comparable now, with inflation considered, this was a more expensive toy, so more was going on. But still, it's an interesting comparison, I think. Let's have a quick look at him with standard He-Man, just so that you can see the difference between them and see that he is indeed just a little bit more tan. Here is the exclusive Battle Armor He-Man, and just a part of that legacy of Deluxe He-Man releases. Of course, this was a pack with Battle Cap, but I mean, it makes him what? Not just Deluxe, Premium, we'll say. Here he is alongside, frankly, a much more impressive Deluxe figure, and that is Flying Fist's He-Man. There's just so much going on here, and this guy is leaps and bounds better. And I'm going to do this comparison because I am so happy and thankful that we're able to do this comparison. And say what you will about the price of the set and the performance of the set, but that He-Man TV Sensation pack that they did gave me the ability to have a jet lag, cartoon accurate, New Adventures He-Man. And just to be able to compare these two in the same scale and style is awesome. And much in the same vein, we also have the ability to look at the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe CGI series from Netflix and a version for Origins, thanks to that very same fun set. So for this next section, sometimes honestly I wonder if I go a little crazy with this part, because I love doing He-Man head swaps just to show you all the different possibilities, because it's one of my favorite features of the modern Mattel lines is that there's all this modularity. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you think that I go a little crazy with it, because it's definitely something that I can trim out in reviews and not do as much of. But I think it's really cool, but maybe I'm in the minority there. Maybe it's not as cool as I think. And I'm here to make the reviews for you guys, not for me. First head swap we'll do brings it back to the origin of Origins, and that's that original mini comics head that they used to go with. Glad they moved away from this. But it still looks pretty decent, especially if you're looking for more of that mini comics look. In that same vein, next up we have the kind of berserker head, as I always call it, where it's He-Man freaking out that came with the Deluxes, and I've actually always thought this head was really fun. Looks like He-Man's just losing it. Another previous Deluxe head swap is the old Yelling head, something that definitely should have been included here, if nothing else. Ready for a 2000X version of Thunder Punch He-Man? Then there you go. I always have fun imagining if a lot of He-Man's armor variants were in the Filmation series. This is a great way to do that. Because it's so different and so out there, I always like seeing the New Adventures head on these bodies, and he has a ponytail, so you can't go wrong. As always, we have a preview for the next season of the Netflix CGI series. Look at that. It always surprises me how decent that CGI head tends to look on classic versions. Little known lore fact for you is that Wondar also accessed the power of Thunder Punch to defend the Power Sword. Okay, he didn't, but still. And shockingly, Masterverse heads not only work on these pegs, but they're in scale, since Origins heads are always larger in comparisons to their bodies. This one works strangely well. It's the new Eternia He-Man head. Isn't it almost just a little bizarre that this works as well as it does? I mean, it really shouldn't look this good, but here it is. And due to their choice of He-Man's weird jaundice look in that first Masterverse He-Man from Revelation, this one never works as well on these bodies because He-Man's skin tone is a little too light, but still, you know. Here's one that's fairly fun, and that's the classic head that came in the Masterverse movie He-Man. And it looks pretty good here. It's time for everyone's favorite head sculpt, the movie He-Man head from Masterverse. It honestly looks a heck of a lot better on this body than it does on the other, and I think this phenomenon has everything to do with us expecting the head to look like Dolph Lundgren on the other body, and here it's a lot more acceptable as just a mini comic He-Man or something. And finally, the one that you've been waiting for, the Ratlore head. I'm kidding, but the world of Masters head swaps can be a weird one. And in trying to figure out which Masters figure needed to suffer, then I decided that Terraclaw Skeletor had been particularly evil. Why, Jared, I thought we were friends! Nope. Alright, so let's just see how this works. We're going to get a third-person view right here. This is the He-Man video game you always wanted. We got to loosen this up, make sure it's just barely on there. Yeah! Woo! All right, so there's definitely a lot of complicated things to say about this guy because I'm of two minds about it. Let's start with the good. This is a really well-made representation of Thunder Punch He-Man. He looks really good. Everything is accurate. He does exactly what he needs to do in terms of being a visual representation, and it's very serviceable, even with a few things we'll get into later. The other thing is he has an action feature that does actually work, and it does a great job of simulating something that, well, I guess is kind of lost to time, that cap popping kind of sound. So that's cool too. I like his accessories, they're really nice, even if he doesn't come with some of the ones that I wanted. So it ticks all the boxes that it needs to. It just feels like there's things that are missing, like another head sculpt for He-Man. They have a large library of He-Man heads to choose from now, so it wouldn't have been that difficult just to have pulled from that previous library, or heck, the better circumstance would have been to have made a new one. It's also missing some of those extra hands that we've come to expect. And in particular, for people who are new to the line, it would have been nice to have gotten a grasping hand for the right so that he could have held the power sword in that hand while he's got the shield in the other. They missed the opportunity to do some vac metallization right there on the front with the H and the rims of the shield. They also could have had that backpack open up in the back, just like the Classics version, so you could have done some cool stuff and you could have twisted the little knob in the back. So in the end, he's definitely a recommendation. I like him a lot, but part of that is my favoritism towards the Thunder Punch armor design itself. So I've always really liked Thunder Punch He-Man. I think the biggest issue with him is that he doesn't pack the value that things like Flying Fists He-Man packed. And because he doesn't have that and the extra features and the extra accessories, I just think that he's missing that little extra something. So it's not like I'm saying that he's the greatest Masters figure. He's certainly not even the greatest Deluxe, but I think that he's an adequate portrayal of that original figure, and I think he gets the job done.
And with that being said, as always, make sure that you subscribe, you like the video, and be sure to comment down below. Think I'm being a little too harsh, or do you think I'm right on the money? Just let me know your thoughts. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.